Alrighty, we are on.
We are on, and that's on. So, you ready?
Yep.
Let me get this started. All right. Alrighty. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Gordon Walsh.
I'm Joe Abraham.
And you're listening to
Looking for the evidence.
And today's topic is
End times.
End times. Hey, this show is sponsored by Alive in Christ, and we're located on Badger Road in Kennewick. And service time is Sundays at 10 o'clock, so we'd love to see you here. This week we actually have a guest speaker. You're probably
cool.
hearing this, if you're listening on the radio, you're hearing it this morning of Sunday. So also, his name is Miguel. So, hey, we'd love to have you come on down, check it out, and enjoy your time here. The next week, Ron's going to be back.
Oh,
so,
awesome.
Yeah, so Joe's going to be missed. And then,
Ooh.
yeah, so next week, we're actually going to be talking about abortion. So,
Wow.
Yeah, that's the hot topic right now, abortion. And so we'll be
The
talking
whole
about that
Roe v.
next
Wade
week, so.
being pushed back, pulled back, and
Yeah.
all good things happen.
Yeah, the visceral reaction from the people. I mean, I don't quite understand it because they act as if it's been abolished if it's illegal.
It's just the left always just any step taken back for them is like a loss, even if it's not a loss. I mean, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg once said that this Roe v. Wade is not just good law; it's just not good law. Even for them, it's not good. And so
Yeah,
they just
and it went back to the control of the states,
Yeah.
and then you can say, okay, if I live in a state that wants to outlaw it, then then I guess you'd have to go to a different state to have an abortion. I don't know why.
I'm sure Washington's.
It's funny. I just watched this thing, and then we'll move on to the topic is, because it's gonna be next week. But this, I can't remember who it was. Some guy that does videos. Anyways, he said he talked to this person, and he said he was talking about how the eggs for the turtles are endangered, and if you do something to them, then you're going to get a felony, and or you're at least going to get a big fine from messing with turtle eggs, right? And then an eagle egg, if you mess with an eagle egg, not only do you get a fine, but it is a felony, right, to mess with eagle eggs. And it's recognized that there's an eagle in the egg, and it's recognized that there's a turtle in the egg, So why don't we do that with humans? And then the person says, well, because they're endangered. So you do recognize it is a human. I mean, and that's the argument. It's not a human yet. It's not until it's birthed before it's a human.
Some states allow even after birth, so it's not like it's not like they're drawing the line there either.
No, I know it. So I'm glad. I mean, I think I was born almost 3 months early, so. I guess according to abortion, I wasn't really a baby, huh?
Yeah, children. The view of children is as not as in separate individuals. It's like toys they get to play with.
Yeah.
Like if I want to be a mom, as if it's like something.
Well, then wear some protection for God's sake, so don't have sex. I mean, it's not that complicated, All right, I won't even say anymore. I'll just move on, man. Just if you're bumping uglies and you're wanting to practice making babies and then you get pregnant, then it's your responsibility not to take care of the issue, but to raise the child. And if you can't do that, then just put it up for adoption. There's plenty of people here that would like a baby, and make adoption easier, for gosh sakes. You guys complain about not enough people wanting to adopt. Well, shoot, me and Teresa looked at adopting, and we had to go to this stupid class for 20,000 hours. We did,
Really?
man. Yeah, and then it was at a time that wasn't even convenient to us because we both worked. It was just silly.
That's the thing. Adoption
And then it's
is so hard.
expensive. And actually, this wasn't adoption. This was what do you call it? Where you take care of foster kids. Right. So
Yeah.
I do take that back. When we did look at adoption, it was just crazy expensive. And as an average person, they have lenders that give money so you can adopt, right? You can borrow money. Now, what do they take the kid back if you stop paying? I mean, what's the deal here? I don't know. So
what's interesting is but what it is I understand the reason for it, but at the same time you're like, okay, we understand there's people who abuse the system and the kids being abused, but there's a lot. If nobody adopts, which is happening a lot because it's such a huge process, most of these kids end up in foster care and have
Yeah.
really abusive lifestyles.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so
Yep. And two of my son-in-laws were raised in foster care, you know, and they're good men, but there was a lot of things that went
They had to
along
deal with,
that,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So yeah, just make it easier and stop making it so expensive. Why are you trying to profit on it, you know?
and in the church initially,
You're probably funded by the government anyway, so you don't need to profit on this.
the church, it isn't active in that realm as it was at one point in time.
Yeah.
We are more concerned about litigation and all kinds of things, but the early church that was taking care of the orphans and the widows. That was one of the most fundamental aspects of care and relationship and showing love that the early church did. Is like, you have to provide for these people. They're
Yeah.
underprivileged, and that's what made the early church so strong. Is all these people felt they were cared for and they were valuable.
Yeah.
You know.
So next week we'll be talking about this. Ron will be back, and we'll be back on board with that. So
Awesome.
maybe Joe will run the camera for us so we can have more than one angle
Okay.
as he laughs. Ha 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 ha! You're a funny man. Hey, anyways, but today we're talking about the end times. Why are we talking about the end times? Because it seems like it comes up a lot, and not only does it come up a lot, it seems like it's come up a lot throughout history, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but today I'm talking about looking. What are the signs of the end times, and are we in the end times in the sense of signs, right? Mm-hmm. So, what do you think?
The sun, one general theory I hold on to, not theory, but like a perspective that I hold on to, is the end times. We're always in the end times situation, kind of.
Right.
And the reason I say that is every people group from the early church beginning, that's how they viewed it, and I think it's necessary to be viewed that way, because along with that comes a certain mindset that you need to have, certain level of angst, and on a certain level of urgency, which Jesus placed in you. Like, I'm going to come back soon. Time is going to be done soon. You cannot be complacent. You cannot just say, I can put it out for later, because there is no later. And I think that is so fundamental for us as Christians to have that sort of a burden, that sort of urgency in our life and purpose in our life, where things have to be done now.
Right.
We have to live our lives righteously now. And so I think, along with that sort of a perspective and a mindset, now you look for signs to kind of better adjust yourself with the times, to be prepared, to prepare other people, prepare the church, prepare your neighborhood, make aware to people who are non-Christians how important, or how, I don't know, I'm losing the word here, but how necessary it is for them to look and open their eyes and look for what is happening.
Okay, so you lost me a little bit in the sense of.
I went too far.
Well, you
Too many
started
points.
talking about that it's end times throughout history,
Mm-hmm.
so every generation has end times, and then you move to looking for the signs. So, not to clarify that, so I have a better understanding. I understand. I understand what the looking at the signs, but I'm talking about why you mixed them together.
Because I feel like there should be a certain way to live your life, and that's the perspective I was pointing to. It's like, you want to have a certain level of urgency, which comes with feeling like the end times is coming for every
Okay.
generation.
So I guess if you're looking at the end times as every generation, for me, and I've talked about this before, even from the pulpit, not as a preaching series or anything, but from the pulpit as, we should live our life as if the end time is here, because our end times could be here today.
Yeah.
I had a friend, a person that I knew that was in Special Forces, downrange 3 times, or 3.5 times actually. It was his 4th tour, so he's been at war 3.5 years, comes home on leave or vacation, and on I-5 or in Seattle area, gets hit by a drunk driver and killed. So he wasn't planning that day. His day, he was healthy, and all of a sudden his life was ended. So his end times was there, and I think that is critical. A lot of people think, oh, well, and I don't know if it's a lot of people. Honestly, I used to hear this a lot, where it says a lot of people think this. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I think a lot of people just think that there is no God, and if there is a God, it's a universal God, that all things lead to the same heaven, right? So I don't know if any more people believe, oh, at the end I will, I'll readjust. I'll be the thief on the cross, if you will.
Yeah, that seems to be one point of view of a particular group of people, I guess. Religious people seem to have some level of end times no matter what religion you are.
Yeah.
The Muslims have their own system of some type of an end of this life or end of this realm, so
Right.
to speak. But what the stark difference is a person who is agnostic or atheistic in that manner. They look at a perpetual condition, which is this life exists forever, this world exists forever, and you can see that in their angst to protect Earth and protect the environment. They're like, this is it. We're going to be annihilated if the temperature goes up by 2 degrees, and they go nuts about it because their world ends here, and so there's a completely different paradigm that they
Right.
that is being viewed. And Christians, sometimes we fail to realize we're not super tied to this realm and earth, and it's just like, I'll be fine. I'll be in heaven, and
Yeah.
and that mindset.
Everything will be hunky-dory, right?
So, and for a non-Christian, there is no heaven, so they are very. I've noticed this is the way they think of life and I think of life is different because I have an end in the sense of I die, but also that life after me does not exist. Like my children might,
You think this?
yeah, like after the end of the world, there's no more my grandkids and legacies,
Okay, well, hold the mic.
Yeah,
by your mouth.
I know. I do this terrible. It's called.
I know. So you really, you're kind of all over the place for me right now, because you were talking about end times and how the view of the people that you said were atheists and as Gnostics believe that this world is in existence for eternity, and then if it does end, then there is no more people, so therefore there's an urgency because there is nothing for them after they die. Then you said, and you started talking about yourself as if that was the same. So I don't.
No. What I was saying is with Earth, they look at Earth as a continuum of the universe, right? So as long as the universe is not going anywhere. In their perspective, the universe ain't going anywhere.
Okay.
And Earth can stay or not, depending on conditions. And if they keep the conditions ideal, they can survive, and the species can survive basically perpetually.
No, I understood that.
Yeah.
But you said that when you die, that it's the end. There's no more kids or no more nothing.
Oh,
So-
with the Christian apocalyptic worldview, once the world ends,
Yeah.
in essence, then my children and my great grandchildren or whoever, whatever timeline that is, it all ends. So my view of my generational,
Well, what ends though? I don't understand, because if
my
if
lineage, my legacy, everything just ends. It's not like I have to work on this earth to make myself great so I can live forever, like Alexander. He wanted to make a legacy that is still echoed 2,000 years later.
Okay, so that okay, all right, okay.
Kind of.
I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, but what
Yeah.
you're saying is, okay, if the world ends, then there's no more procreation of children, and therefore my legacy ends with that.
Because if you
but
look-
you're in heaven, and your legacy is there with you, that you're going to be
Because
with.
I'm a Christian.
Right.
So I don't have a problem with that. If I'm not Christian, then that's why you have people throughout time who've sought for,
Well, yeah, but I think, honestly, I almost think that's a small percentage of people, because I mean, if I look at the comparison of people having babies to ensure their legacy, okay, I'll say the Muslims or maybe the LDS and Mormons, but the rate of abortion I don't think they're thinking about their legacy. I think they're thinking about today and today only. And look, I can get rid of this problem that I have in my belly, so therefore I can have an abortion, and they're not worried about their legacy for long term.
But they want to do
and then
something
the amount
remarkable,
of children.
make the change or make something something remarkable.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's what your generation thinks, and if you say that as your generation, I'm going to believe you. But your generation honestly is doing nothing. So,
Well, because you ask
so
a
there's
kid
no effort for
who
them.
goes to work, he's like, I want to leave a mark on the world.
Yeah, and they quit that job
Yeah.
and they go to the next job, and then they quit that job and they go to the next job. I mean, I know young people that just go bop, bop, bop. They go, oh, I got the best job in the world, and then a month later it's the worst job, and they want to go find a new job. And if they can't figure out that pattern, anyways, we're not talking about that, but that is a serious issue going on right now. And working with business owners, and I'm a consultant, that's an issue that they have. They're like, man, these young people. I mean, they're just. It's just mind-boggling. So if that's their concern, is that they're going to want to make an impact on the world, then stop being stupid and start actually sticking to something. So I'm going to go on from that because that's kind of apparently a sore topic with me. I want to talk about one of the things that happened in the world that we can't deny, because I look throughout church history, and throughout church history they've always talked about the end times, right? And they sit there and say, oh, the end times is now. And then, I mean, look at just in the last 22 years, starting at the year 2000, I mean, how many predictions have we had of the end times? And I know before that, and the reason I say 2000 is I got saved in 2001. So, and I remember the Y2K, right? It's the end of the world, Y2K, and the computers aren't even set up for this. Microsoft didn't forward think, and they're going to crash, and all these things, as if that was going to be our end of all, end all.
And then
computers.
the Mayan calendar.
Yeah, the Mayan calendar. All these things have been out there, but that's just in the past 22 years. There's been many prophecies of the end times. We talk about the blood moons, and on John Hagee, which I read the book. I actually liked the book, and it was pretty unique, and you look throughout history. But this time, the blood moons happened, and nothing happened. And I think God just says, look, you guys are looking at the wrong signs, But the one sign that I find that I can't get away from is Israel becoming a country. It talks about that in Amos chapter 9, verses 14 and 15. That'll be rebuilt. The city, the Israel and the city will be rebuilt, and the people will gather, and they will come back to their land, right?
Yes, and going to your point, I think using Israel as the pointer or the focus point is always a good thing, because the end times or the tribulation period or whatever you want to call it, right? They all are centered around Israel. Israel's the main character in the story.
Yeah, you know what I find funny, and I've had people get offended too when they come to me and they're talking about the end times and look at America, and they keep talking about America as if we are the point of focus of God, but we've never been the point of focus of God. The point of focus of God since Abraham has been the Israelites, and it's that throughout the scriptures to include today. If you want to see the end times, look what's happening in Israel.
Yeah. Yes, and one of the signs is the battle of Gog and Magog.
Yeah, but I think that's a little bit later within the breaking of the seals, right? Because you have the four horsemen first.
It's in the time of tribulation.
Yes.
So I mean, it is assuming, because I'm assuming when the tribulation starts, we're not really recognizing that the tribulation has started. It's not like, here's the race started.
Yeah.
So as you see some of these events happen, you're like, oh, okay, we're in that period. We're in the 7 years, or when the world leader comes up. And I think, but to be honest, more than ever, I feel like our world is now moving towards a system where there is two ideologies that are clashing, and now they are being politically split and ideologically split, and nations are getting behind these ideologies. And the nations that have the differences in their ideologies are going to become two states, which clearly is sort of what. If you read, if what I'm reading, and I'm looking at pre-rapture. I mean not pre-tribulation pattern.
Yeah.
But it's the same. It's the same events. It's just in what order they happen is the contention, right?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I suppose. I mean, that part, when I've done the research on it, I don't know if it's... now, if you're talking about the rapture, then it's when does that happen? And there's many philosophies.
Yeah, but the events are all the same. Antichrist shows up, Antichrist does that. It's just when the rapture happens with
And
between which one?
I'm more of a mid-trib guy, you know what I mean? Or right before the end of the tribulation, I guess. Mid-trib before. Somewhere around 3.5 years into that. You know what I mean? I kind of look at that part of it. But, I don't know. I'm a what is it?
Yes, hope for the best,
yes,
prep for the worst.
That's right.
Honestly, I think that is the way to go, and I think that at end of the day, that's the guy who's going to make it.
I think that one of the areas when we look at the naysayers, right, the people that want to disagree with the end times, and they talk about it, we can see this in Matthew 24, chapter 24, verse 34, Mark chapter 13, and Luke chapter 21, verse 32. It says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until this has taken place," right? So that's a big deal when it comes to the end times, right? I mean, this generation, okay, so who's he talking to? A lot of people say, well, he was talking to them because he was living there. Once, hey, I'm telling you, this generation's not going to pass before the return of Christ, right? So that's one of the big issues. But the problem that most people have is they're taking that one verse and they're laying that as, okay, this one is the false teaching of Christianity. Jesus Christ obviously was wrong because that generation passed. But if you read the entirety of that chapter, it's actually, you can tell it's a future event. Okay, so that's the first thing that we have to know. So then now, if that's the future event, and the benchmark of that future event is Israel becoming a country again. So then, when does this generation pass? Now, when you look throughout the scriptures, really throughout the scriptures, I would say the generation timeline throughout the scriptures, there's been a few in there, somewhere between 80 to 120 years. Our generation, today's culture says 40 years is a generation. So, yeah, they kind of look at it as, because by the time you're 40, you've created a new generation.
I
right?
look at it as 20 to 25 years.
So,
one generation.
Yeah, but that's kind of what they've done. But when you look out throughout the scriptures, it's around, I want to say probably closer to 120 years, but that's kind of my understanding. I'll agree with between 80 and 120. So we're right now, we're definitely, if you're looking at that time frame of that coming to end, then we're in that window, right?
I've always used the modern 20-year period, because you have the Generation X and you have the generation,
Right.
millennials. It's about 20-year, 25, at most 25 year, 20-year. They usually have a 20-year gap between millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and then there's so many now. So.
Well, yeah, but even if you want to do it that way, it says this generation will pass away. So you still got to say, okay, the average age is around 70-something now, so then it would have to be 70-some years. So if we look at when did it come into existence, 48, right? So then we go to, 40 years? So we're at 60-some years, right? So yeah, we still got another 10 years roughly before this happens.
When it talks about generation, it's not just generation. It's the lifespan of that generation.
Right. Yeah.
Which would be 80 to 120, like you said.
Yeah.
So,
but here's one of the other things too in the research that I found is that the word Janae also means race. Okay, so your ethnicity. So, and Jesus is talking about the ethnicity of Israel. So this is another one that I could look at as saying, hey, you're not going to pass away until the end times, because it talks about very I say to you, unto you, this generation shall not pass away until all is be fulfilled, right? So so when I look at it that way, the Israelites are going to be around until everything's been fulfilled. You know what I mean? So
generation sometimes is considered this age or this era or whatever you want to call it. The marking of so you have the era of the law, and then the era of grace, and so a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but I've heard they use generation as the era of grace, or the period of that kind of time frame, or that age.
And you look at Isaiah in chapter 11, right? It says he will raise a signal for all nations, and will assemble the banished of Israel. He'll assemble them again and gather them from the four corners of the earth. And we see that happening as well now. So that's kind of, for me, is the benchmark. The only part that I have is my time frame is not God's time frame. 40 years in the desert to him is like, oh, okay, and that's it, over with, where we're like, wow, that's a long time. So, I kind of look at that. I also look at the Israel calendar. I think we're in 6,832 or something like that. So I look at it as about another 100 and some years before we hit 7,000, which would be the millennial reign, right? So that's a possibility. All these things are possible, but like what you said at the beginning of this message, is we should be prepared now, because maybe the end times for the world isn't here, but it could be for me.
It's still within your lifetime that
Yes.
you have to have.
That's right. Now, what are some other signs that I see? The other signs that I see is, if you will, is the Tower of Babel, right? The Tower of Babel is a time that God says, man, I gotta mix up these guys' languages. I've got to cast them throughout, disperse them throughout the world, because there's nothing they can't do. Since then, this is the first time in history where the average person that knows one language can communicate throughout the world. I talk to people in India, I talk to people in Africa, I talk to people in all over the world through the internet on a regular basis.
Well, Google Translate or translation technology is really getting ramped up because they see the impact it has when you're able to communicate with the different people, especially the
Yeah.
business impact.
Yep.
And so the translations are getting better and
Yeah.
they're being more intuitive, and it's almost to the point where you speak and they hear their language.
I know it. Yeah, exactly. So that's to me is another sign that we can't take away. Also, traveling to and fro, right? I mean, not only this has only been an advent, not even the last 100 years. I mean, really, the airplanes where we get to travel to and fro has not even been around 100 years. So, we're able to do that now.
And now we're really focusing on faster travel. I mean, we're putting, I mean, it's still in the early stages, but we're looking at within the next 100 years. The world is going to shrink a lot more.
So the next 100 years, we're going to be like Star Trek. Right? Beam me up, Scotty.
Early stages of Star Trek. I mean, as much as I would like for that to be, if it ever was a reality, that would be cool.
That would be cool.
I would love to travel to other planets.
Yes. Even just being able to travel to other parts of the world would be really cool right now, just in an instant,
Yeah,
I mean,
beam me up.
Teresa and I are going to be flying to Hawaii, and probably going to be recording over there in Hawaii with Teresa and I doing a couple shows, and which is going to be fun. And then I'll just have to use my phone, so it'll be a little bit different than how we get it out. But so that's like going to be I think it's about a 5-hour flight over there, and then but then from there we fly to Florida. That's like an all-day affair, man. So yes, I would definitely want a thing, in Luke chapter 21, verse 36, it says, "Be always on the watch and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man." Really, this is a big deal, because when you look at the pandemic, when it happened with COVID, I had a lot of Christians calling and freaking out about and in big time fear, and I'm thinking, man, this is just minor. Honestly it is. I mean, the flu kills, quite a few people, and you're not freaking out. All of a sudden, because this was pushed, and I'm not saying that COVID's not a bad thing. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, it's real. I believe in it being real. I've had COVID, all these things, but the visceral reaction that we had to that, I'm thinking, man, at the end times when this really gets dangerous, are we going to have this great falling away?
Well, man is going to, Ezekiel, you read Ezekiel, we even talked about sometime, man is going to, sons, people are going to eat their own children. Because
that one right there, that one's a little bit different when you read into it and you start to study it, but surprisingly, we're out of time.
Okay.
I mean, that's obviously a good topic, and that's one of the things that Islam uses, or Hindus use, Buddhists use, that, hey, look, the Bible says that they eat their own children. Well, it's not really necessarily. You need to read more about that, okay, and do some study on it. But let's move on, because we're at the end of time. God bless you. Godspeed. I'm Gordon Walsh. The show's sponsored by Alive in Christ. Love to see you here Sunday at 10 o'clock. Come check out Come Expecting on Sunday.
All right. See ya.
Godspeed. Yeah, that one went quick. All right. Hey, you're still on Facebook, but we're going to let you guys go. Joe's going to go turn it off, so you'll be able to hear me talk a little bit. But keep in mind, your end times could be any time. Whether you believe in end times or not, I'd say just be prepared to meet your Maker at any time and be a good representation of who Christ is here on earth, why you're here, I mean, you can go turn it off. I'm just holding up some time while you're doing that. Okay. So, I see so many Christians that are just, not representing the holiness of God. I mean, I understand if we mess up once in a while. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, you're driving on the freeway and someone cuts you off and you get mad instantly and you act a fool. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you live a life of consistent lifestyles that don't represent Christ. That there is problematic. So hey,